to Books Unbound, the podcast where we unbind books to get to their hearts with your hosts, us, Ariel, Raylene, and today our special guest, Meghan Hughes is in the house!
Hi guys, I'm so excited. My dog's here too. This is Rue. She
unbelievably good.
Demanded to be a guest on her first podcast. She really wanted to do it, so I'm honored.
With her tiny hound.
Yeah.
Look at that tiny hound. I love Rue.
I love how calm she is. Like, I can't believe it. My cat would never.
I can't believe it either, personally. This really isn't her energy, but she understood the assignment and the vibes today. So for that, I'm thankful.
She wants to be a star.
We're talking books. Let me have a nap, she thought.
Absolutely. I guess.
Oh, Meghan, we are so excited to have you here. Me and Meg, we go back. We go back to some random buffer festival in Toronto many years ago.
Classic. Yes.
But Meghan, I feel like I know that you've always been into reading, but over the last few years, I feel like it's become more and more and more of a thing for you. And you now have your really cool Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, take us on your reading journey.
Okay.
Is that a thing for you?
That is a thing for me. So I didn't really start reading heavily, I feel like making it a daily habit, or at least trying to, because, if I'm doing stuff on the weekends, it gets a little clogged up. Like, maybe I don't pick up a book every day, but probably around 2018, maybe it was, you know what it was? It was when I moved to the countryside and stopped living that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I was living in LA before that, and I just felt like, I don't know, I just wasn't really as into it. But then when I moved into more of a slower paced vibe for myself, then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get more books. And I'll talk about this later because of just all of the questions that I know I'm going to be asked, and I prepared my answers for. But there was definitely something that kind of kicked it off, something that I read where I was like, ooh, I want to do this more. So yeah, it's been a couple years.
Share with everyone, what is the handle for your book Instagram?
Okay, it's kind of silly. So it's Mother Truckin' Bookworms, but it has periods in between. So Mother period, Truckin', no G, and then bookworms. Yeah. I considered, at first I was like, should I change it? After it got probably over 5K followers or something, I was like, maybe I should just change it. Because also it was my husband and I's shared account, and then he kind of dropped off from using it, and now he doesn't really use Instagram at all. So I was like, all right, well maybe I should just make it Meghan Hughes book reviews or something. And that's what it says. Exactly. So that's what it says in the title. If you go to the profile, but everybody voted for Mother Truckin' Bookworms to be.
I love that. I would have never guessed that was the name of your account. If I came across that, I would just be like, I don't know who that is, but let's keep going.
I also think it's really important that when people type that into Instagram, they have the accent.
Yeah.
Because it really adds a lot to the entire experience.
It absolutely does. That's the only way for it to be read. It's kind of my alter ego. I feel as though, when you have an accent that just takes over your body, and sometimes you just speak that way for a while. I don't know if both of you can relate, but that happens to me a lot. And I've named him, his name is Randy, and he's just a southern, man who, he's on the brink of divorce, and he just really, he goes to get breakfast at the Best Western Inn for the continental breakfast, and that's how he talks. And he runs Mother Truckin' Bookworms, apparently.
He loves
books. He can't get enough.
I love it. That Randy is a well-read gentleman. Huh? All right. Well, I am so excited to have you. We are so excited to have you. And we do have, as you foreshadowed, a lot of questions for you.
Yes.
So let me start us off by asking you, what would you consider is your favorite book or books, if you feel pressured by only picking one?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I actually just immediately had the answer of the one, and while there are other things that are seasoned in there, that could compete a little bit, but there's really just the one, which is I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson.
Yes.
Obsessed with that book.
Okay.
I've reread it 2 times now, and I love it so much. It's just such a beautiful story of intertwining lives, and I don't know, there's just so many aspects. It's way more than just a YA cute little novel to me. It's like it covers so many topics about like grief and you know, handling coming into your own, and also just like family stuff. And yeah, it's really beautiful. So I love that book. It's really close to my heart, and I'll always be like, oh my God, everybody please read it if you've never read a book that you really enjoy, you know? I just feel like everybody would love it.
I actually was hoping that you'd say that one just because that's the book I most associate with you.
Yeah.
Well, that one and one I think you'll bring up as well, but the Mr. Philip Pullman one, because I see you talking about those two so often.
Yeah.
Raylene, do you want to probe our next little question here?
Yeah, another really tough one, or maybe not. Who is your favorite author?
Well, you see, Ariel just totally foreshadowed it. It's all just going and blending into each other.
Classic.
My favorite author is definitely Philip Pullman. He is an absolute icon. I will say his Twitter is a bit deranged, but other than that, he is great and fantastic, and I love him. And yeah, I just really think that he covers so many things too. Like those books that originally I read from him, which is his Dark Materials series, you know, The Golden Compass, all those things, they cover the craziest concepts for being like a children's based novel. Like he gets into the separation of like church and state, and also, you know, having like a spirit animal in a way, and what that would be for each person. And I feel like he talks about like class too in it. And, you know, while it's magical and cute and a nice fantastical story, it's also like, when I offered those books as a suggestion to my sister's boyfriend, I was like, you will love them, because not only is it like a cute fantasy series, it's also like, I'm an adult and I'm reading these, and I feel like it's really, you know, it pertains to me as well. It's not just like oh, hee hee ha ha, this is a kid's book. And like it feels like that at times, but then it's also, it's cool for all ages. So he's great. I love him. I'm waiting on, you know, another book from him to come out after, I think it's after the Book of Dust and the Secret Commonwealth. There should be a third, and I'm like waiting on that because it has not released yet. So
Hook it up, Philip.
Raylene, have you read those Compass books?
Funny that you ask. When I was a tween, I read The Golden Compass, and I did not connect with it at all. Like I don't remember why. So I'm like, I think I may give it another try one day.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, but I read it, and I remember being like, this took me 2 weeks to read, and that's not a good sign for like 11-year-old me. It's like usually I read a book in like 2 days. I was like, oh, this is such a slog. I just remember being bored. I don't know why. But I remember like the concept of are they called like demons? I think the little spirit animals. Yeah, I remember thinking that was very cool.
Yeah.
So I could see myself getting back into that potentially.
I remember also that was one of the most disappointing book to movie adaptation situations where they like made this epic cool movie and then never followed it up at all. And like that was so deeply confusing.
Well, they did end up making up for that with their series, so his Dark Materials series on
the new show.
HBO.
Right, that's true.
It was a total hit, and everybody, for the most part that I've talked to at least, has really loved it, which is great. I actually never finished it, which is a little embarrassing. I think I have like 8 episodes left, and I was just like, well, you know, eventually I'll get there, but I need to revisit it. But it was great. I mean, I thought it was beautifully shot and well casted and well acted and all those things, but I never watched the movie for that exact reason that you said, Ariel. Like I heard it was just so horrible, and I just did not want to do it. I was like, I can't see Lyra in this way. It's a bad idea.
It was like they were trying to start the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but like it was so epic, and like everything was so fancy that it was actually really hollow. And then it was sort of like, well, maybe we can justify this because the next few movies are really going to have the meat of the story. But then they just never made another movie of that. That
like,
was
what
weird.
was that?
That was so
it was
weird.
Nothing.
No more
But to your point, Megan, to your point, I do think like loving books and liking their adaptations or even watching their adaptations is two completely different things, because there's so many books that I love and they've gotten turned into movies, and either I just haven't seen them, totally missed them. It kind of feels like every other day there's a new book to movie adaptation, and impossible to keep up with.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to also stick to a show that was that. Every episode was like almost an hour, and I just felt like I wasn't able to just understand all of it at once. And I also was trying to like keep up with somebody else I knew who was watching it, and they're going too fast for me, and then I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna give up. I'm just gonna give up.
Be free.
All right, Ray, what's our next cue? I was gonna say lightning round questions, but these are not lightning round. We're never
None of them
we're
are
never
lightning
round about them.
Take it as slow as
I'm not a lightning round kind of a person either. Any call I've ever been on or conversation I've ever had, it's like, if you know me, you know I tell a really long story. So if I'm going to answer a question, it's going to be 3 paragraphs in length.
That's
an
perfect.
Introduction, some supporting points, and a conclusion.
Well, that's perfect. Well, I'm interested to see how you answer this question then. What is your favorite genre or genre you read the most?
Okay, well, so I would definitely say YA is my most read genre for sure. And then right now, what I'm reading a lot is more memoirs and like books of essays and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like I haven't, well, I did read YA in the past few months, but I feel like that almost used to be strictly what I read, like only YA.
Right.
But now I'm like kind of branching out and getting a little more sophisticated with my reading, which is nice as an almost 26-year-old woman. I'm like, maybe it's time. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely...
Do you feel like reading YA helped like really get you into the habit of reading? And like it because absolutely. I did. It was huge. It was so huge for me to have YA as this like really motivating, easier to read, faster paced thing that is like built to be kind of zippy quick, as my pal Raylene says. And I'm standing up to close this curtain, but that really doesn't change my point, really. That, I think YA is actually such a great tool for getting people into reading.
I completely agree. And now, for some reason, people are saying, like, Colleen Hoover's specific area of books is really good for hooking people because it reads very fast-paced. I personally hated It Ends With Us. I thought it was horrible, and I will never read another one of her books again.
That's my experience too. I read Ugly Love like 6 or 7 years ago, and I was like, never again. Sorry.
But it's become very popularized, at least like in the kind of area that I am online, where everybody, what I'm seeing either on my For You page on TikTok or like what people are talking about with me on Twitch or something, stuff that they want me to read, or even just on my Bookstagram, they're like, oh, you would love her. And I'm like, you don't know me, man. You don't know me at all.
It's like, I love Philip Pullman. Get with the program.
Exactly. No, Colleen Hoover and Philip Pullman, they simply wouldn't get along well. Not in my brain and not in real life. But yeah, I also agree with you, Ariel, that it's just so easy to gobble up. Like if I were to get a YA book, I could finish it so quickly, especially if it's like a really fast-paced, really great, just story that's all well-rounded. I mean, some of it is just like terrible. Like I've read some that I'm like, this did not relate to me or they tried way too hard to be too young and relatable, and I'm like, is this how kids speak nowadays? I hated it. So
quit it.
Yeah.
Hating it.
That could just be because I've kind of aged out of that category of person. Like I don't get any of the lingo, so maybe I just don't want to really like read books like that, which is fine to age out of reading stuff like that, but at the same time, all of the authors who are writing them are like in their 30s and 40s. So it's like, you're trying to be relatable by saying this, and I'm cringing for you. Anyways.
It is such a fascinating thing because so much of the online reading sphere is dominated by YA. They're very trendy. They have these like big trend cycles, but also a lot of the YA readers are very like ultra fans of their authors. Yeah. And so they just kind of like do a really good job of posting photos and videos and TikToks and YouTube videos, etc. about them. So they kind of like, I feel like they show up a lot more than any other genre. Very often online.
Yeah, totally.
But like because of that though, I feel like people are so protective of YA, and like I remember when I stopped reading YA, it was never like I never was like, I'm going cold turkey. Like, I hate YA now. Like, screw that. No, I just started being more interested in other things. And I was just like following that joy and being like, I'm actually really excited to read this. And ooh, what are memoirs? And ooh, what are these things? And I just slowly, the scale really shifted to where now I really don't read YA at all. But I remember I got a lot of anger and aggression from people who are like, I hate that you've abandoned YA, or that you think I got a lot of people who are like, you clearly think you're pretentious. And what I think is fascinating about that is that, like, we all age out of children's literature.
Yes.
And we don't have to, like, proclaim that we hate kids' books. Like, I don't hate A Series of Unfortunate Events. I love, like, we all know that you can do both things. You can have loved it in one period of your life, but now be ready for the next thing.
Yeah, or be reintroduced to it at a later point in your life.
Yeah.
Like, if you're getting kids into it or something like that. Like, I'm very excited to read all of my favorite YA books again when I have kids. So,
yes.
Who knows? Could reintroduce me into that category. And there are still so much of... there's just a lot of my YA books that are just, like, in storage along with all of my other books right now, where I'm sure that I will pick them up at some point and return to it. But I'm definitely, like, kind of, like, that is my favorite genre, but I'm kind of like, trickling out as you did. So.
Yeah. All right, Ray, what's our next one? Ooh, I'm excited about this one.
Oh, yeah, this one is fun.
Yes.
It's funny. I'm just like looking at these questions for the first time in a week, so I forgot what they are. Favorite bookshop is the next question.
This is a very exciting question indeed. Okay, well, I used to live outside of Portland, Oregon for about 4.5 years. So that being said, my favorite bookshop ever, bookstore that I've ever been to was Powell's City of Books. It's incredible, multi-level, beautiful. I loved every second of being there. And any time that we went into Portland, we were like, how can we go right now? Let's just go and get a lot of books. And we would, like, call ahead or put things on hold and, like, go and get them. So I love that store. I think it's amazing. And, you know, while they had other locations across town, I would only ever go to, like, the biggest one. Yeah. And it was just so beautiful. And honestly, I moved to Virginia in early September, and I have not been to a bookshop here since moving, which is pretty disappointing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I know. This is not the time to bring that up. They're gonna hang up on me.
Like, that's so
That's very
Are you okay?
interesting, Megan.
Yeah, very interesting.
I mean, it is, you kind of moved like a year, no, not a year ago yet. How long has it been since you moved to Virginia? Like 6
No, it's been like 6 months. I moved in September, so.
Yeah, exactly. So it's only been like 6 months. So if it'd been like 3 years or something, then it'd be like, that is odd behavior.
Yeah, you'd be like, okay,
we've
so
got
you're
other things
never
going on.
away. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, one of my challenges this year is to visit all of the bookshops in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
That's only possible because there's only 30. Like, Nova Scotia is quite small and has very small population, so there isn't that many. But yeah, you should try and visit some, because I think that would be it's such a fun way to, like, meet your town, is, like, through the bookshop.
It really is. And I mean, I've seen books being sold at other stores, like a fun shop or, you know, a gift store or something. I'm like, but this isn't a bookstore, you know? So I really got to seek them out. I also need to venture to my local library as well.
Yeah, totally. Are you on that Libby? Sure. Are you on Libby? Is Libby American?
I'm not all up on that Libby. I know, another thing that I'm feeling shame about.
Do you hate it?
No, I don't hate it. I just haven't gotten into it, you know? Like, I downloaded it, but I just, quite honestly, like, I never really understood how to use it that much, so...
Yeah, it honestly took me so many attempts to download, delete, re-download, delete. Like, I had to go through a system. It wasn't until I realized that I could just get any audiobook I wanted from the library. Yeah. That was the game changer for me. Animal Crossing comboed with an audiobook. I mean, the dream.
On. Can't be beat.
That's the dream. Okay, Ray, what's our next one?
Now we're getting into the juicy stuff. What are you currently reading? Oof. I'm so curious.
Well,
I'm like, I feel like I don't know that much about your reading, so I'm lay it on me.
I know. Okay, well, it's so funny that this was a question on here, because the last time that I texted Ariel, like, right leading up to the podcast was about this book, and I'm reading 3 Women by Lisa Taddeo. And I am loving it so far. I have a book club with my Bookstagram, and I chose that book to be our February book club pick. But I finished my last book for January book club so early, that led me to starting Three Women before February 1st. And now, like, everybody else is just kind of getting into it, or like just getting through the prologue or something. And I'm like, so I'm halfway done with the book. And we're not really reading it together anymore, which is a little unfortunate. But I decided, like, right before we recorded this podcast today, that I'm just going to spend, because I do my reading updates on my Instagram story on my Bookstagram. So I'm just going to, like, go back to the prologue and, you know, share my favorite little, like, my underlined and bracketed portions and everything. But it's definitely a very raw, real, nitty-gritty type book. Like, very deep. There's a lot of different facets to it. But I'm kind of entering my, like, feminist literature era, which
we all have to get there eventually.
I'm really into, for sure. And it was kind of put into my mind to do this as well. The reason I read this book is because I listened to Emily Ratajkowski's podcast, and she's a supermodel, but she also, like, covers so many feminist-based topics. On her podcast has amazing guests, and she had on Stephanie Dandler, who's the author.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's the author of Sweet Bitter. So we read that for January for book club. And when she was discussing Sweet Bitter, she also suggested, you know, Three Women by Lisa Taddeo. And I was like, this woman is incredible, and I just love what they're talking about. And I loved, you know, just the general conversation and, like, the way that they were examining just so many aspects of, like, being a woman in society. And then they were, like, kind of drawing from other books that has inspired their books. You know, Emily has also written a book called My Body, and I read that a couple years back, and it was, like, a book of essays. It was really a memoir about her life, but yeah, put in, like, essay form, and I just thought it was fantastic. So I bought everything that they suggested. I was like, yes, absolutely. So I think I'm going to read next, like, Girlhood by Melissa Fabos, if you guys have ever heard of that. So,
I've heard of it. I have not read it.
Yeah, well, I texted Ariel because I was watching some video of yours, and I saw Three Women by Lisa Taddeo on your shelf, or, like, in a stack of books. And I was like, I wonder if she's read it. So then I just wanted to see your thoughts, because it is a loved and hated book, just like all books are to some extent, you know?
That's why I got it. I'm like, ooh, it's got some spicy, like, discussion around it. Like, I want to read that.
Yeah,
so
maybe I'll kind of change my mind as I continue. But I mean, I'm halfway through, and I really like what it's bringing up. Well, it's kind of hard for me to say that. I actually like that I like what it's bringing up in my own life, but it's encouraging me to work through some crazy things that I haven't thought about in a couple years, you know, just around men and all that kind of stuff. Because, you know, being in a healthy relationship, you kind of forget about all of the hubbub of the past, or you try to, you're like, black that out. Don't know why I ever did that, or was ever involved with men who treated me that way. But it's kind of examining all of the aspects of that. So I'm really enjoying just getting into all of that meat, I suppose. It's been nice. Yeah.
That juicy, juicy meat.
Yeah.
That juicy vegan meat.
Yeah.
All right. Our last question comes with a small explanation, because we made up a concept that we now have to explain to everyone for the rest of our lives.
It's true. So I'll ask the question and then throw it to Ariel for the first time ever. So the question is, what is your mashed potato book right now? Either one that you've conquered or one that you still have. Ariel, want to explain to the world
especially when we
is.
have guest episodes, we have to re-explain it, because oftentimes new people will listen to these episodes and they're like, mashed potato book? So this concept literally goes back to our second episode. We were trying to find an analogy for what happens when you have a book that you've been meaning to read forever, and that you are genuinely so excited to read, but because of that own excitement, it's blocking you from reading it because you keep waiting for the perfect moment. And so I did the analogy of, it's like when you're having turkey dinner and you're like, I love mashed potatoes, I'm gonna save them till the end. And then when you finally get to them, they're either like so good that you're like, God, I should have just enjoyed this throughout the meal, or they're cold.
Yeah.
And you're like, God damn it, I should have just eaten these already. And there's just so many books where you either like finally read it and you're like, yes, my God, I should have just read this so long ago. Why was I waiting? Or there's books that are like still haunting you. They're like tapping you on the shoulder. They're like, hello, why aren't you reading me? And you're like, God, I don't know. So there you go. Megan, what did you pick?
Okay, well, really great explanation as well. It's a good analogy because the entire time I was thinking, yeah, most of the time, if you wait, they get cold, which
They get
I'm
cold.
hoping does not happen with this book/series. So my mashed potato book/series is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how you pronounce her last name. I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been on my radar for so freaking long. And also because I enjoy just like fantastical things, not just in reading format, but like in my daily life. Like I love a good Renaissance fair. I love like medieval things. And I just heard in that community, like how suggested and well loved and received this series is. And I'm jazzed about it, and I don't own any of them, but I am looking forward to the day that I do, and I have been seeing a lot about it actually on Instagram again, and this series is from freaking 2015. I'm like, why is it...
It's old, yeah.
Still coming
Her
up.
books, this is one of those examples of like a fan base that is so powerful.
Yeah.
Like people love those books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that they're like kind of spicy, and some people love to hate them and are just like, oh my God, don't ruin your life by starting that series. And to that I say, I'm interested in doing that. I'm interested in, I want something to ruin my life for a period of time. It means that it was good if you're still thinking about it so many years later. Like, this is
powerful.
Unrelated but related, but I'm currently playing the Life is Strange video game series.
I love those games.
I'm on episode 4. Well, I'm going to play it tonight, episode 4. And I'm playing them on Twitch and stuff. And like when I was sharing about that, everybody was pretty much just DMing me like, this series is going to ruin your life, all this stuff, like, so heavy, all this stuff. I said, okay, well, I'm interested in it doing that for a period of my life. I mean, and I was definitely, by episode 2, I was rocked to the core. So I was still thinking about it. After I turned off the PC, I was like, damn, wow. I went downstairs and like told Finley all about it. He was like, well, I guess it's the power of a good video game because you're sitting here talking to me about it. I don't even know any of the characters, but
I don't know what the hell you're talking about, woman. Yeah.
It's good stuff.
I think that's a really interesting choice because, like you say, it is an older series, but you're right that like it's still burning so bright for people.
It really is. Like, it stood the test of time for some reason. So I don't know if it's like I just hope that it's not too outdated in the way that they speak, at least. When I read it, because sometimes, you know, where the slang, I just don't think that they'll be using slang from like what I've heard about the series. It's not going to be like
it's
hip,
fantastical,
cool.
so it's probably not.
They're not going to be like hip, cool theater kids or something like that trying to like be funny and quirky. They're going to be actually, I don't know. I'm ready for it.
I guess we'll find out.
I guess, I'll just have to find out. I genuinely don't know that much about it. All I know is how it's been just on my radar for so many years, and everybody keeps being like, you would love that series. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is another Colleen Hoover situation where that would not be great. But one might hope that that's not the case.
When you read it, we're definitely going to have to get you back to see. We need to do like at least get like a voice clip from you that's like the mashed potato chronicles.
Oh yes.
Like what happens when these people, when all our guests finally read the books they've been meaning to read? Like, does it work out or not?
That's a great idea. One of your best.
Yeah.
One of your best.
That would be super cute. All right. Well, those were our get to know questions to try and get a little bit of your reading situation. And I'm feeling pretty good. I think we know a bit more about you. Now we're going to dive. I'm so excited. We're going to dive into some listener recommendation requests. So these are sent into us by our lovely listeners, people asking for very specific recommendations. And I chose a lot. I chose like 7 to send to Meghan because I was like, what are Meghan's interests as my friend? Like, what do I was like, mushrooms.
Yeah.
Cottage court. No, that didn't come up with any. I just like typed in all of these different things and I feel like we found some pretty good ones.
Yeah, you did. You really nailed me down. It was great.
I got this one.
Yeah.
All right. So, Raylene, do you have these in front of you?
I do.
All right. Start us off with the first one.
Okay. So the first one comes from Hannah, who says, "Hello. I'm desperate for a book to read in between doing cross-stitch. One with a warm feeling and possibly a character who enjoys crafts. It could involve a mystery, but nothing tragic." Love
Fair.
that.
Not a fan of tragedy over here, so I was happy to give you a suggestion in this area. So I highly recommend the Tiffany Aching series by Terry Pratchett. Love him.
Okay.
He is so much fun. The entire just like Discworld series as a whole, but that's a huge world. It's not even a series. It's the Discworld. Like it is fucking immense. So honestly, I just think that even the first book in this series, which is The We Free Men, is so freaking cute. And it follows along the story of just like a young female protagonist. And it's magical and mystical, but it also has some aspects of just like, when you mentioned that you did cross stitch, I was like, okay, my cottagecore queen. You know, I was kind of getting those vibes from this suggestion. So Tiffany Aching, one of her hobbies is cheese making, and she was raised by like a shepherding family, and so she like interacts with the sheep. And then the We Free Men has the We Free Men are like these little blue Scottish, I would kind of I don't know if I would describe them as like elves, but that's kind of what they are. They're very tiny, and they like start, you know, just fiddling with her sheep and doing little silly things. And she's like, what the hell are these guys doing here? And then she follows them near and far all around where she lives. And it gets into this whole just like magical world. And I read the entire series. And he actually, so at the end of the series, because it was suggested to me by my brother-in-law, at the end of the series, the author, Terry Pratchett, he was kind of on his like deathbed a little bit. So he was really struggling with just like memory issues. So the story didn't like, you know, resolve how maybe you expected it, because the writing style just like dwindled along with him, which is very sad. But I wanted to finish it and be like, okay, you know, although the man got Alzheimer's, I still read all of these things. And also it was just interesting too to follow along like it to the end, because she grows up and has you know, all these little parts of her life that I was like, okay, I feel like I grew up with her. I love stuff like that where you follow along somebody's like aging journey, and as they, you know, meet lovers or, you know, become interested, because it does start as like a children's, like I think she's probably like either 9 or from 9 to 11 in some kind of a, you know, area there, and then it carries on until she's a little older. So it was really great. And I think that would be good also for you to listen to as an audiobook, especially if you're doing cross stitch. You could like listen to it while you're doing it. But then if you're like, oh God, my hands are tired, I need to like actually physically read the book, then that'll be good too.
Megan, have you read Anne of Green Gables?
I have not. And
oh my God.
I know. And as like
but Megan, you have orange hair and you're wearing a gingham dress.
I know.
Do you not understand?
I'm not trying. Get it.
I'm not trying to stereotype.
And it's a series too, so it sounds like could be right up your alley.
The reason I thought of it is, first of all, obviously it's super rural. Like it's because it's set because of when it's set, but it's just like farm life and everything.
Yeah.
But the reason I thought of it now was because the first book is when she's 11. But by the end of the book, she's older. And then the rest of the series is like she meets her husband, she has children. So it's like the whole arc of her life, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, well, I'm also like New Girl's #1 fan, the TV show. And Jess in it is like obsessed. Well, Jess and Cece are obsessed with Anne of Green Gables, and
as they should be.
They'll like talk about her all the time, and so I just was introduced to it from there. And then because I also follow a lot of like cottagecore girlies, they'll always style themselves like her or kind of do that aesthetic. She is on my Halloween costume idea list, but I haven't, read them. Also, Tiffany Aching is on my Halloween costume idea list because she walks around with a frying pan to like protect herself. And then I also just feel like she has like these big clunky boots and like long hair and like, wears these little aprons and long dresses. And I just think it would be such a funny little niche costume that nobody would have any fucking idea
are you
what I
Anne
am.
of Green Gables?
Yeah, they would be like, great.
Close. All right, Raylene, what did you pick for this one?
Well, I decided to go with Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones.
Nice.
Diana Wynne Jones, sorry. And this to me, it just feels like the perfect kind of cozy vibe, but also Sophie is literally a hat maker, which is a cool craft. Obviously, she doesn't like make hats throughout the book, but it felt like an important point. And it's just like lovely, cozy, fantasy, happy, like nothing really scary happens. It's just like a lovely time, both the book and the movie. So I recommend both. I mean, you can watch the movie while you cross stitch as well if you want. So yeah, I just felt like it had to be said.
That's adorable. That did have to be said.
Yeah.
The one that I picked is the most random choice. And I read this literally 15 years ago or something. And I'm like, why am I picking this? But I stand by it. It is Princess of the Midnight Ball. Like, even the name, I'm like, 2009. So
can you even get that book anymore?
I feel like maybe you still could. So this is... For me, this is basically like proto-YA. Like, I read this before I knew about YA, and I think, like, before bookshops were calling it YA. So it was, like, in that phase right while, like, Twilight and stuff were starting to come out and everything, but we didn't really have a scene the way we have a scene now. Yeah. And so I'd never heard of anyone talking about this. I just went into the bookstore one day and I was like, ooh, Princess, Midnight, sure. And I was like 13 and I bought it and I read it and I loved it. So it's like this fantasy-esque series. It's a retelling of different like folk tales and stuff. And this is the one, I'm trying to remember what the name of the original folktale is, and I'm of course forgetting because it's been 5 ever since I read it. But basically this princess is trying to get married. And so she has all these suitors that are like coming to visit her, but the reason she keeps like saying no to them is because she's kind of betrothed to this kind of devil king. So she has to pretend that she's like courting all of these men, but then at night she has to go down with her sisters, like go down into this cave thing and dance with these like demon princes all night long.
Oh my god.
I've read a book like that. I think I read another retelling of that because I haven't read that book, but I've read that story.
So it's got this really beautiful world. I remember flying through it because it was really fun. Because of this challenge, I looked it back up and it still has pretty decent reviews. Like, people are like, this is a pretty decent like retelling. And I was like, okay, cool. It kind of is holding up for people. Yeah. But the reason that it comes into this whole cross-stitch situation is because at the very last line of the synopsis here, it says, to banish the curse, they'll need an invisibility cloak, enchanted silver knitting needles, and true love. So they have to like, they have to knit their way out of this.
Oh my god. That's hysterical.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's perfect. Oh man. All right. What was our next one, Raylene? Our next little recommendation here.
Yes, our next one comes from Jet. I think we've answered some from Jet before. Jet always has great
cool.
requests. And she says, "Hello, I was reflecting on my reading last year and realized that one of the things I always love reading and would like to read more of this year are nonfiction books about really specific niche topics. For example, a book just about tomatoes." So what do we have?
I have
to
so
say,
excited about this one.
Probably my favorite tomato memory is with you, Megan.
Aww.
I don't know if you remember when I visited you the first time at your, I guess it was the only time, at your Portland or your Oregon place. Your tomatoes, your cherry tomatoes had just come in to like harvest time. And so Megan was going out every day and bringing back so many tomatoes and I was eating them all. I have never eaten that many tomatoes in my entire life.
And I'm so happy that you did. I remember the exact tomatoes as well. I think they were like the sun gold variety and I was obsessed with them because they're like kind of yellowish, like more of a mustardy color, and they just taste so good. Oh my god, best variety ever.
They were so good.
You know, tomato nostalgia is a powerful feeling, I will say.
It's a powerful drug, damn it.
Okay.
I stopped thinking about that summer.
Oh, no, truly. Well, my suggestions for this, I actually asked my husband Finley as well, because pretty much all he reads are books on really niche topics that nobody else cares about but him. Yeah. And then he'll tell me all about it, and I'll be like, all right. Yeah, I mean, that sounds really boring, but I'm glad that you loved it. So my suggestion was Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer. So Robin is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, which is like a huge popular book that's in more of like the nature community of readers, you know, people who, and spiritual people, you know, who just want to feel connected to the land. And it also has like a lot of like indigenous wisdom in it, and it's amazing. But she, before writing Braiding Sweetgrass, she released a book called Gathering Moss. And Gathering Moss is a book all about moss. And when I lived in the Pacific Northwest, I was like, I want to know about moss and why is it here? And why are some really lengthy and long and some really short and stubby? And why do they turn yellow? And, you know, it just was so interesting. I'm pretty sure we even read it for book club. So it's really funny that I made everybody else read about moss with me. But we loved it. And I just thought it was really beautiful and taught me a lot about even just like the earth in general. Like I remember there was this one bit about it where it was talking about the layer in between the grass and basically where like your shins are and how the wind will protect down there. Whereas maybe you would think like, oh, it's going to be whipping the moss all around, but it's like there's this layer, I forget the name of it, but it's just unaffected at that layer.
Interesting.
So that was really cool, and I just thought that it taught me so much. So I highly suggest that, and then I also wanted to ask Finley his suggestion, so I'm kind of giving two. But his is Other Minds by Peter Godfrey Smith. So it's Other Minds, The Octopus, the Sea, and the Deep Origins of Consciousness. So this book is all about cephalopods, and it's so cool to just like hear him explain it, because it really got him into octopuses as well, which is kind of weird and niche. But we go to a lot of Renaissance fairs, and there's a lot of people who make like octopus art, or like you know, it's just like sea creature kind of oriented artwork. And so yeah, he's very into that stuff, and it just also the octopus teacher, or My Octopus Teacher, was like a really popular documentary that came out in the past few years. And oh my god, it just really talks about that, you know, because that documentary was a man befriending an octopus and showing their connection. And I know I'm kind of jumping around to a lot of different things here, but it all just wraps back into octopuses just having the most amazing mind and having this really powerful level of consciousness. And he just would talk to me about that book, and even though I didn't read it, I feel like I know that book and I was affected by that book, and it just really explained a lot of just the origins of consciousness for other animals, because we're so curious about that stuff too, because We have pigs, we have dogs, whatever, but we're always thinking about how they relate to us and how they feel pain and emotion and their whole span in that area. So I just thought that those were very niche and that you might like
I love that. I love them.
Good stuff.
Raylene, what did you pick? How niche did you go?
Oh,
cephalopod niche? Did you go cephalopod niche?
Kind of. Mine's like completely different vibe though. It's called, I haven't read it. I just found this online. It's called Just My Type, a book about fonts by Simon Garfield. So it's a book that like takes a deep dive into the world of fonts.
Wow.
Love it.
It's super specific, but I feel like could also be interesting to readers. Yeah, like the synopsis here says, suddenly everybody's obsessed with fonts. Whether you're enraged by IKEA's Verdonagate, don't know how to say that, want to know what the Beach Boys have in common with EasyJet, or why it's okay to like Comic Sans, Just My Type will have the answer. So it's like, I don't even know. I don't know anything about fonts, but it seems like it's a really, like I said, a deep dive into the world and possibly the history of fonts.
I have something embarrassing to confess.
Oh my God.
This entire time, no. I have not.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
No, I thought that you were saying the world of fawns, like female deer. And I was just like, what? And then when you said Comic Sans, I was like, I am not in the same ballpark at all.
We're not in the same zone.
Yeah.
I'm really glad I further explained. I'm really glad I read the synopsis.
I was going to say, like, the world of
Just
fawns,
My Type
like,
also, like, what does that mean? Is this like a romance of a fawn? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I might have to read that. I'm pretty curious about deer.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, I'm sure that there's some kind of deer book out there for you.
Absolutely, there is. Absolutely.
Oh, I love
That's
that.
hysterical.
I love that.
That's really funny.
My God. I think that sounds great, right? I am very into fonts. Fonts bother me. If the font is wrong, I'm bothered. So
there you go.
There's probably a psychology on why.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, I got so excited looking at my shelves for niche books. Turns out there's a lot. I wanted to talk about two very quickly that I haven't read yet and are just two that I'm very excited about. One is called Underground, Overground, The History of the Tube. So this is a deep dive all about the London Underground. I love the Tube. I'm obsessed with the London Tube. Do I know why? No, I'm just so excited every time I get to ride those trains. And so, for example, right on the back, it gives you a little niche fact. It says, the London Underground, which is in fact 55% overground.
Ooh. Wow.
And then it goes, is the oldest blah, blah, blah train in the world. So it's like one of these things where it just gives you so much interesting knowledge about, I've been meaning to read this forever. So that's a good one. The other one is one that I just recently bought. It's called My Cool Houseboat.
Oh, shit.
I know,
awesome.
It's so cool. And it's like stories and information, but mainly photographs about people's different houseboats, and they're just so beautiful. I was like, I will buy this and bring it to my home. Yes, I will. I just think that it's so stunning. So I'm like, yeah, that's freaking niche though.
It is.
A whole book about houseboats. The one I have read, though, that I wanted to mention and really give like a big stamp of approval to is called Vanishing Fleece. So have you heard of this one, Megan?
No.
Vanishing Fleece? Oh, I actually really think that you'd like it. So it's about this woman who loves knitting. She's a huge knitter. And she has friends who own sheep. And again, this is one of those books where when you read it, you're like fully into it. Afterwards, you don't remember the terms very much, right? So I don't know that much about wool, but basically she gets like a huge amount of raw wool, like it has not been processed at all, and she decides she wants to make it into yarn, and it's a whole journey. Like, you have to take it through so many different steps, and she decides to learn, like, really do it properly, but also learn all about the wool industry, learn about how, like, yarn is made in industrial ways, and, like, is it ethical? It's because it's biodegradable, but you have to use sheep and, like, blah, blah, blah. So it's just a huge deep dive. So interesting. Loved the audiobook. It's like only 4 hours long, and this lady is like really cool and nice. So
Cool.
I love that. I learned so much about wool.
That sounds awesome.
There you go.
Might have to download that audiobook and play it in the car with Finley. He loves a good niche. That's what I'm saying. So
exactly. The reason actually that I read that one was because I had been offered to do a sponsorship by this wool company. And they were like, we're really sustainable, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I better not be being greenwashed right now.
Yeah.
I better learn about wool. So I found this book and I learned all about wool. And I was like, you know what? Wool is awesome. What an amazing material. So I felt very, very confident doing that sponsorship.
Yeah.
I was like, no.
That's awesome. I'm wearing little wool booties right now. My mom got me these. Yeah, my mom's a sustainable queen, so I trust her. She would get me a little sustainable moment like these slippers.
I also noticed we all have a ginghamy, flannelly pattern.
That's true.
We do. We do.
We dress to match.
And we all have glasses as well because we read too much and suddenly our eyes are bad.
Yeah. Just a little astigmatism.
Yeah.
That's no problem.
Nothing crazy.
Raylene, what is our third and final recommendation?
Oh, third and final is from Jean, who says, I've become obsessed with mushrooms recently, and I blame Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing. Knowing that both of y'all have collections for subjects you love or find interesting, I want to do the same and build up a mushroom collection. I will also accept mushroom adjacent, which is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank God.
I'm like, I definitely did not pick a mushroom book. It's mushroom adjacent.
Yeah. Well, so Finley also is obsessed with mushrooms. I would say even more than me. I love the aesthetic of mushrooms. I love foraging for mushrooms and just having a grand old time in the mushroom world in general. But Finley has spent a lot more time with mushroom literature. So the OG of really any kind of mycology, if you do any kind of studying at all into this area, is Paul Stamets. And he has a book called Mycelium Running. And it's kind of thicker. I would say that the first two suggestions in this area are thicker. But when I was talking to Finley about it, he was like, well, this person, are you going to read these books or are you just going to have your little collection, Because if you want to have some textbooks that you can refer back to or identification books, we have you covered in that arena, but also reading any of these I highly suggest, but also they're very good looking books. So you could just have them on your shelf too, but that one is bigger. So Mycelium Running, which is really, really popular, and anybody in the mycology world would be like, oh, I love Paul. He's kind of crazy, but he's awesome. He does a lot of talks too, so you could just listen to that book. If you wanted to do audiobook, that would be a great one too. And then the second one was actually Finley's number one suggestion. He was like, not that many people that I know in the mycology world really talk about this one that much, but it was my favorite. But it's called Radical Mycology by Peter McCoy. And I honestly think that one might be even bigger than Mycelium Running. But it's a really cool kind of black, white, and red cover. And it just looks really kind of looks a little anarchist a little bit. So that's pretty cool. And he just really loved that book. And I remember him talking to me about it for freaking months afterwards. And then my suggestion that he didn't even give, but I did, because it's just the cutest little identification book for when you're actually in the field. So it's field size, so you can shove it into your pocket or something. But it's called All That the Rain Promises and More by David Aurora.
I've seen that one. That has the best cover of all time.
Okay, I honestly wish I brought it up here just to show the camera, but I have it on my table downstairs, and for some reason I was just like, well, no, that's fine.
Oh my god, with this guy?
Yes.
With this happy man?
It's a happy man, and he's holding this giant mushroom, and I think he has a trumpet in his hand.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He sure does.
And the illustrations throughout that book are so deranged. And Finley bought it when we were on a hike one time at their gift shop, and it's very popular in the Pacific Northwest, that book is. Yeah. I think just because it's really quirky and weird, Portland is, but also it offers a lot of ID knowledge. So
that is a truly iconic looking book, and I honestly think that would be a lot of fun. I think there's something really different about being out in nature with a book trying to identify versus with your phone and just taking a photo of stuff. Yes. It's just such a different experience.
Totally. Or trying to go off of memory. I love to just fact check with the little book, because they'll describe the gills in full detail and be like, if the underside of it is a little brown around the edges, you do not want to eat this one. It's like, okay.
He knows
I will not.
I I have some really giant mushrooms that grow in front of my house, and to the point where last summer it got so huge, like it was actually a little frightening to me how giant this mushroom got. Like literally 3 or 4 cars that summer stopped in front of my house.
Wow.
And they were all old people, and they all came out and they just took photos of the mushrooms and then left. And I was like, they're pretty epic. Like, that was a huge mushroom. I also, whenever I see a good mushroom, I do take a photo of it and send it to Meghan.
You do, yeah.
The mushroom queen.
It's important that you do that. I really love it.
And Meghan always seems to appreciate it. So
I always
no
appreciate
sign of
it, and people on the internet do that to me a lot. Like, do you guys know Will Derbyshire and Arden Rose?
Yeah.
They sent me this whole video that they had taken and were like, come into my backyard. And they were like, you know, Arden's really weird. You guys would love her if you haven't already met her. And so she was like, yes, come into my lair. And like bending down in her backyard and was like, this is growing by our cacti. What do you think it is? And I was like, honestly, I have no idea. And I spent so much time and energy trying to, you know, identify this for them and go through all of these records of what it could be, and I was just like, I don't know. That's probably the most common looking mushroom I've ever seen in my life. It's just a white mushroom that kind of looks like a parasol. Classic shroom.
It's just a shroom.
Classic. Yep.
The old bog standard.
Happens all the time.
All right, Raylene, what did you pick?
Well, as I am not like a mushroom person, I don't know any guides. I haven't read any books that are about mushrooms, so I took to the internet for this one again and came across a book that actually, Ariel, you and I were talking about yesterday on our live show.
Is it Ghost Music?
Ghost Music by Anne Yu.
Yeah, we picked it. Yeah, we picked the
I
same
figured
one.
we might. But yeah, so I guess we can kind of recommend it simultaneously. But this book sounds super cool, and also the cover has mushrooms all over it. So first of all, the cover will like draw you in with its mushroomness, but it also sounds really cool. So it's about this woman who used to be a concert pianist and is now no longer, and sounds like she just like has kind of like a tense kind of home life. Things are kind of amping up, and then all of a sudden she's like has some mushrooms delivered to her house, or maybe they're not delivered, but a parcel of mushrooms native to her mother-in-law's province is delivered. Yeah, seemingly by mistake. And she kind of, then they start to like cook the mushrooms in different ways, and it's like, what is going on with these mushrooms?
I found this book in a bookshop a couple of months ago, and I was like, God, this is a beautiful book because it looks like sheet music, but instead of notes, there's mushrooms. And I was like, what is this? Like, this is so beautiful. And I started flipping through it, and I was like, this sounds so good. And I actually read the first few pages, and it starts in a really surreal way. It's this woman, she's having this dream about this like really empty room where it's just her, and this giant orange mushroom is growing and growing and growing. And then when she wakes up, she's like, wow, what was that mushroom dream? And then she starts getting mushroom deliveries to her house, and she's like trying to find more and more ways to cook mushrooms. There's so many mushrooms, and every night she's having the same dream about the mushrooms. And then there's these mushrooms in her real life. So I had only read the first few pages and the synopses and stuff, but I was so into it, and I decided not to get it because it was in hardcover, and I was like, how many books can a woman carry home from England? I've already reached max capacity, but I keep regretting that I didn't buy it.
Like, I want it now. I want to get that.
I'm so curious about it, and I keep hearing really good things about it.
It seems so strange, the storyline. Like,
it's a little surreal.
The dreams, it's very, very odd, but I feel like I would enjoy that as well. So maybe we should all read it together.
Really,
that's a fantastic idea.
Book club. The other one I wanted to mention is the one that I've seen the most floating around. I feel like this is the queen of mushroom books, and it is Entangled Life.
I've never seen that in my life. I've never seen that.
I think there's so many mushroom books.
Yeah,
I've noticed that we're having a mushroom moment. Ray, have you seen this one before?
I don't think so. Well, maybe.
Okay,
I don't know. I can't remember.
I guess, we're all on different parts of the internet. This is one that I happen to see a lot of people sharing. Entangled Life: How Fungi Make Our Worlds, Change Our Minds, and Shape Our Futures. Wow. And I know that a big part of the reason people like this one is because it explores this kind of world of how mushrooms help trees communicate, which is like this really fascinating concept that I think is I actually think it's one of these facts that gets people into mushrooms.
Yeah, it does, totally.
It's so fascinating how they have this giant interconnected web that they can help trees communicate ideas and concepts and stuff. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Through their mycelial network. The network of mycelium. It's so amazing. Also, there's some fake news out there about the biggest mushroom in the world. Not about that book, but about mycelial networks.
I was like, get this book out of here.
When I first moved to Oregon, people would send me it was just like a weird viral photo, and it was like the largest mushroom in the world is in Oregon and like this area, and the photo looked like it was an actual like gigantic mushroom, which just makes no sense because it's like, what? Like, why hasn't this decomposed yet? Is it even real? Is it, it just makes no sense. And when you actually look up the fact, it's just the biggest network of mycelium that exists. And so it's like the underground white webbing that, intertwines all of the trees and, plant matter and everything like that. So just wanted to say that it was kind of a random anecdote. Don't know.
Megan's out here stomping fake mushroom news.
Yeah.
It's important work. Important work that needs to be done.
Yes, it's an honest living. It is.
But yeah, I bought this because I'd heard really great things about it, and I've only had it for a few months, so I'm like, oh god, every time I catch it in my eye, I'm like, yeah, it's time to really learn about these mushrooms.
Yeah. I really like that tiny mushroom that's on the binding.
I know, right? This little guy right at the
bottom.
Yeah,
That's super
look
cute.
At that little guy.
He's so sweet. He's such a sweet
cute.
little guy. Yeah, I think this looks really good. So there you go. I mean, this really was a mushroom fest, and I'm very, very glad. I'm very glad that it went there.
Yeah.
We covered a lot of different things.
We did.
Your
This was such a
listeners,
great
you guys have the best listeners who have just like a really wide variety. I mean, I know you sent me a lot of recommendations, so I saw a lot of the variety in itself, but you guys really, I mean, I love it. I love it. Also, people asked about like video games and all of these things, which we didn't really like get into, but I loved everything that you sent me, and I hope I helped with some suggestions.
I mean, that is me and Raylene's constant worry. Did we actually recommend good books? We'll all find out together.
Yep.
Megan, thank you so much for hanging out with us and talking about books with us. We definitely need to have you back, and I am going to follow up about some of these books. You'll send us some voice clips for the pod.
Yeah, for the mashed potato moment. I'll do that.
For the mashed potato moment. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for this epic episode. If you want to check out Meghan, which you should, she is going to be linked in our show notes and our description. Her Instagram, her book Instagram, but also her Twitch, also her YouTube channel.
Woo!
You have every option.
I know.
Of how to watch more Meghan content.
Yes.
So again, thank you all so much, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was awesome.
Yay!
Love you.